Greetings, everybody. This is Carrie and Josh, and we're going to talk to you today about something that we're calling more than an affair. And so if that resonates with you, then you're definitely in the right place. And the first thing we want to just say is that we work with couples all the time that have experienced infidelity in their relationships. And so if you're watching this segment because that's your experience, then we want to just express our deepest sympathies for that, because we know that couples are really hurting and struggling through this experience. And so, but we do want you to, or hope that you will get something out of this video that will be helpful and offer you some direction in effort to help you with healing.
Right.
Okay. So when we think of this idea of more than an affair, I think that most people we work with, their default position after they discover infidelity or a series of affairs in their relationship is, oh my gosh, he's cheated or she cheated, and we need to find a counselor that will that can work with couples or that regularly deals with couples that are going through an affair, and we need to get that ball rolling as soon as possible. Correct?
Right.
Yeah.
And most people think of infidelity as cheating, and that's a big enough trauma and wound that you're going to run to a counselor right away and say, do you work with couples and do you work with infidelity?
Right. And we're glad when couples jump on it that quickly, because some people aren't as fast to do that. And so you're definitely in the right mindset.
Right.
What we want to pose to you is this idea of what if it's more than an affair, and some things that we want to give you to consider as you do this research and you seek out the appropriate mode of care for yourself in this. And so when we say more than an affair, when we're talking about, are you dealing with or looking for affair recovery as part for your treatment and help in your family? Or are you looking for something that's more than that? And what we're talking about is sex addiction recovery.
Right.
Is what you're dealing with is sex addiction or something along those lines with sexually compulsive behavior.
Right. And it is different. And you're going to do different work, and you're going to need to work with a professional that can help you discern, are we doing affair recovery, or is there something more? Are we looking at an addiction, a compulsion? Because the treatment is different. If we think it's going in the direction of a sex addiction or a compulsion, then affair recovery is part of the healing.
Exactly.
But there's more to do in addition. And so it's important, it will save you a lot of time and heartache if you can get, if there's more, if you can kind of tease that out in the beginning. Right.
And one thing that I say is that sex addicts always cheat to some degree, but not all people who have affairs are sex addicts.
Right.
And so
probably majority of the time,
right,
people who cheat are not sex addicts.
Correct. And so we want to give you a few things to consider, just 5 things. Now there's a whole criteria that we operate off of as counselors, professional counselors in any addiction, to be able to diagnose that. We don't really want to bore you with all the nitty-gritty details of that criteria and the lingo involved. But we want to give you a few things that you can look for and kind of self-assess, is like to determine for yourself, do I need to look for a sex addiction counselor, someone that can better assess what's going on here, because it seems like there's more than an affair.
More than an affair, right.
So the first thing that we're going to talk about is, are you noticing a pattern, or are there multiple partners? So in other words, it could be multiple partners over a short period of time, or it could be 2 or 3 partners over a long period of time. And that sometimes is confusing to couples when it comes to sex addiction, because most of the time we think of addiction as something that we need daily or weekly to get by in life.
Right. The difference too is that it's more not just about the number of partners as much as it is how does it fit into a pattern. And sometimes that pattern is so secretive that if you're the partner, if you're the wounded partner in this relationship, you may not be aware of the pattern. And it will take some really, exploring to identify the pattern. And so if you're the partner who has stepped out of the marriage, that would be an important step for you too, to evaluate, is there a pattern here?
Right. Exactly. So the first one is, are you noticing a pattern or multiple partners involved as part of the infidelities? Secondly, is pornography involved, or is there a role of porn in the relationship? So our cultures normalize pornography to a large extent, so I think this can really slip by people.
Right. It's an important determiner, though, because it's almost like pouring lighter fluid onto things. Does it increase the intensity of the problem? And what role is pornography in the affair, or perhaps even the acting out?
Right. And one thing I'd be clear on whatever moral stance you take with pornography, it is something I think is important to say, is that not everybody who looks at porn is addicted to porn.
Right, absolutely.
And not all sex addicts are addicted to porn, even if they use pornography as part of their addiction.
Right,
so,
right. It's kind of really, what is the function and the role of pornography in the sexual acting out?
Exactly. Next, we want to pose the idea of risky behavior, and a lot of times that takes the form of anonymous sex. And so if the infidelity event involves prostitutes, massage parlors, or even anonymous free hookups through like hookup apps and websites, then that's kind of getting beyond what we typically think of when people cheat.
Right. The risk involved in anonymous sex with strangers means that somebody's is feeling compulsed for more. And so that would be more complex.
So we're seeing an escalation, basically.
Right.
Because most of the time, from at least in the experience I've worked with couples in affair recovery, is what they're dealing with is building a relationship with people over a period of time, people they know, that they work with, or even if it is like a one-night stand or something, they're in the wrong place, wrong time, they had a little too much alcohol, and it's a single event.
It's a poor decision-making event versus seeking out risky behavior.
Exactly. Next, if a lot of times people who are acting out regularly, their spouses or people that they know will identify them as having addictive personalities. And what they really mean by that is that they are just compulsive or impulsive people in various areas. So it could be work, money, gambling, eating, or even substances like drugs or alcohol.
Right. And it's also common, if we're looking at a sex addiction pattern, for there to be one of those things that Josh mentioned that seems to increase at the same time that the sexual acting out increases. So again, that kind of goes back even to point number one about a pattern.
Exactly.
So most of the time, overwhelming majority of the time, people who actually fit criteria for sex addiction have another addictive or or abusing something else.
Exactly. And this last one we want to mention, and I'm going to let Carrie talk a little bit more about this because she works with the partners of sex addicts primarily, and so she has to work with them a lot on this concept. And it's a concept we call gaslighting, which is another word for that is crazy making. So I want to let Carrie kind of take over from there.
And this is the hard part, because sometimes the crazy making behaviors are so small that you can write it off, and that's what makes it so genius and so effective. So there are little things like denying a behavior that you see, really well done distracting, talking to you about things but wrapping it in a way that you miss really what they're saying and you're distracted by something else. It's a way for somebody who's hiding something they're ashamed of, or that they have they struggle confronting, and so they kind of create a world of a fake world, and they're trying to convince their partner to live in that so that they can kind of continue the secret.
Right. So in a nutshell, if you're the wounded spouse or partner and you're your experience with your spouse or partner is they're always making me out to be the crazy one, or I feel, or am I going crazy?
And I have a lot of people that ask me that.
Right.
And remember that it's also something inside of you that you just intuitively know something's not right. Yeah, you explained that charge on the credit card, but it just doesn't make sense. Or yeah, I understand that there's traffic, but you were really late. Or, I understand that you been stressed at work, but you're really, really distant.
Right.
There's always some piece of it that could be true, but inside of you just go, it just doesn't add up.
Right. And on the addict side, most of the time it's a defense mechanism. Absolutely. Because they need you to think you're the one going crazy so that the behavior that they're involved in can continue to thrive.
Sure.
And so a lot of times they don't even know they're doing it. Right. It's just such a part of the defense structure.
Right.
Of it. So let's just quickly review these real quickly so that you can think of these as a whole. So first, are you noticing a pattern in behavior or with infidelities or pattern going on?
Right.
Is pornography involved in any way? Does it have a role or a function in the relationship or in that person's life? Is there really risky or escalating type behaviors like anonymous sex and things like that going on? Fourth is, do you notice a co-occurring, or that's the technical word,
something happening at the same time?
Right. Multiple addictions,
substances, work, food, gambling.
Compulsive behavior, or that addictive personality, as a lot of people say.
Yeah.
And then lastly is, are you feeling crazy? Do you feel like you're the crazy one, which is the gaslighting behavior?
The gaslighting, right.
So if that resonates with you, what we would encourage you to do is consider the idea that you might be dealing with more than an affair. And so you might consider in your search to find someone that can help you determine really what's going on here.
Right, right.
So,
and if you already have a counselor, take your concerns to your mental health professional. They should be at least able to talk you through and answer some of those questions. If they can't work with sex addiction, then hopefully they can give you the resources.
Exactly.
To have someone who can. If you don't have a therapist and some of the things we're talking about today fit, then we would really encourage you to seek out a certified sex addiction therapist in your community.
Right. And so there is a directory for certified sex addiction therapists that you can find on sexhelp.com. But you're also always willing to contact us, and you can do that through our website, which is familysolutions.ok.com.
Right.
And we'd be happy to provide you whatever direction that you need, or the resources that we have available to us to help you get to where you need to go.
Right, right. And if what we're saying today helps you discern that it seems more like an affair than sex addiction, then same thing, take it to your current therapist, or look for a therapist who is specializes in couples. And I would definitely encourage you to ask from the beginning what your experience in working with couples who have experienced infidelity. Because there are specific trainings that therapists can have, certifications or trainings.
Exactly. So we hope this was a beneficial segment for you. Also, please follow us on YouTube and on Facebook. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.